This is episode 97, Dealing with Disaster Days, my adventure in Montenegro. Welcome to Alive by Design. My name is Blake Mallon, and we're here to bring you inspiring people, principles, and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. Open your mind and let's dive in. Hey guys, before you listen to the podcast, I just want to drop in and say I appreciate you for being here, and I'm super excited about this new Walk With Me series. These are solo episodes where I take some time in the middle of my morning run through the Santa Monica Mountains to share some inspired ideas and thoughts on my mind and heart. If you want to join me for any of these conversations live, you can catch me many mornings on my Facebook page, facebook.com/BlakeMallon.page. Would love to see you there. Love you guys. Enjoy the episode. Walk with me. Another beautiful day here in Southern California. Running the coastline this morning. Getting some miles in. Have a question for you all this morning. Have you ever had a bad day? No, I mean like a disaster of a day. Like a day where everything's going wrong. You're like, it can't get any worse. And then it does. Like, it does get worse. Have you ever had a day like that? Maybe a few. And when you're in those disasters of a day, did it affect your attitude? What was your energy like? What thoughts go through your mind when you're in the middle of a chain of consecutive negative events? You know there's a story coming after that question, right? So yes, I had a recent disaster of a day. And I want to share that with y'all and some lessons. You knew that was coming. In reflection of a very interesting day in my life that just recently happened. So about that day, so I just got back recently from a trip out in Montenegro. If you don't know where Montenegro is, don't feel bad. I looked up on a map the day before I went, and I was like, where am I going? Montenegro, a small country in Europe. If you know where Italy or Italia is, and you imagine that boot coming down kind of right off the heel of the boot, so toward the bottom, across the Adriatic, you'd find the country of Montenegro, kind of right adjacent to Croatia, Bosnia. So that area, beautiful country. I didn't know much about it, but absolutely enjoyed my time there. Very scenic, definitely a place to see both by land and by boat. Picturesque mountains, forests, lakes, all the way down to obviously gorgeous waterfront, some beautiful ports. Matter of fact, we pulled into Porto, Montenegro one evening on a boat, and I learned that it's the most elegant port right now in all of Europe. Reminded me of pulling into Monte Carlo with all of the giant mega yachts. Saw one yacht dock that was a $250 million yacht, 100,000 euro a day rental. Day rental among just so many beautiful boats from all around the world. So great place. Definitely recommend adding it to your list. But was out there for a leadership retreat for our community. We had about 150 entrepreneurs come in from across Europe, mainly Italia, to get together to raise our standards, raise our belief, raise our skills, do a little mastermind as we continue to lay the foundation of our European pre-launch. But it was an awesome event all around, the leadership, the training, the information, but also just the time to get together and connect. We've talked recently about the importance of our community, of our network, of our relationships. Now more than ever, and coming off this weekend, I'll continue to say, I think it's one of the most maybe underestimated conversations today is just how important getting together, connecting, community is now more than ever. My business partner, Brian Underwood, always says, proximity is power. Proximity is power. In other words, being connected, being together creates an energy. Iron sharpens iron, right? We, at the end of the day, look at our cell phone and the battery's low or dead. What do we have to do? We have to plug it in, right, every single day to recharge, or it loses its value, it loses its function. And we forget that we have to do the same thing with us. Like as we go through life, we get drained, our batteries go down. That's natural, that's normal. That's nothing to feel bad or negative about. That's a normal process. We as people need to plug in, right? We need to recharge. And one of, if not the best way to do that is connecting with like minds, right? Connecting with people that inspire, that raise our belief, that lift each other up. So I'll continue to say that now that the world is starting to open up, whatever that means, we can get together. I suggest you do it. You make it a priority. You make it something that is in your calendar. Like get together with the people that brighten your light, right? That recharge you, that feed you, that give energy to you. So outside of all of that, it was a phenomenal event, but I know you want me to tell the story. So we were talking about a disaster of a day. You're like, Blake, how could you have a disaster of a day in Montenegro, a beautiful place with awesome people, right? It sounds amazing. It was epic, all of it, except for one day. So we get up on Sunday morning, as far as the event agenda, was the experience day. And the team, the hosts, the leaders putting on the event had put together a curated an epic experience, whitewater rafting, because Montenegro is known for just epic whitewater rafting, the scenery going through the river, mountains on both sides. It's just world-class rafting. So an awesome experience, obviously a great adventure. And in that experience and adventure, a great way to create relationship and team building. You know, there's nothing that builds relationship like shared experience. If you think about it, the people we are closest to and have the strongest bonds with, it's because we have the most shared experience with. And a lot of time, the strongest experiences are new experiences, first-time experiences, because we remember those, or adventure experiences, things that push us outside our comfort zone, because that stretch, right, allows us to remember those. So if you think about it, those two things are kind of the fabric of strong relationship. And it's something you might want to apply to those you care about and want to rekindle or elevate a relationship. Or if you're a leader out there, an entrepreneur out there leading teams and organizations, I suggest creating environments where those two things are possible, right? New experiences, adventurous experiences. So it was a perfect setup, right, for the day, a great idea. And I get a message right in the morning saying, hey, you know, for today, make sure you bring a change of clothes, right? A towel, your ID, you know, a jacket just in case for tonight. So just kind of the basic checklist seemed very, very simple, of which I grabbed all of that. And, you know, we get in the buses early Sunday morning and we start to drive. Now, the place was 200 kilometers away, which is not close, right? But being the fact that it was world-class and known for it kind of makes up for it. The team's like, well, how long is this going to take to get there? And like 200 kilometers should be about 2 hours. I think they were thinking or factoring like normal roads, maybe 2 hours driving quickly, not mountain roads, long curves in buses. So we go, and a 2-hour trip really ended up being about a 3.5 hour trip, until we got to almost the very, very, very end, where we come up on a customs border. customs border, customs like we're leaving a country and entering a new country, which nobody knew or had communicated. Turns out the river we were rafting was actually the divide of the country between Montenegro and Bosnia and into Croatia. And where you dropped in on the rafts was just on the other side of the river, meaning that while it was only maybe a kilometer outside the country, it was in another country. And when you go through customs, for those of you that are well-traveled, what do you need to have? And this is where I learned a valuable lesson in translation. You see, in the US, when someone says ID, we naturally associate that term to our driver's license. But when you're international through translation and someone says ID, yeah, they're referring to your passport, of which both myself and my business partner, Nick, had left at the hotel, locked up, because that's what you do with your passports when you travel as an American. And didn't have our passports. We had our driver's license, our ID. So we pull up and there's a border wait of about 20, 30 minutes and we're nervous as heck, sending messages. You didn't tell us we were going into another country, customs. We don't have a passport. Like, oh, it should be okay. We're scrounging for like digital copies and photocopies and our story of what we're gonna say. And we pull up to the Montenegro border and guy looks at us crazy and we explain the situation and translation and ID and we show them the photocopies and the Montenegro customs lets us through. We're like, whew, that was close. Right, 4 hours into the trip. That would have been horrible to have to turn around at the very, very end, 1 kilometer, right, from our destination. We go down around the corner. GPS says we're, a kilometer, half a kilometer away from the drop site. And we come up on another customs line. Another customs line. Well, yeah, because I guess we had to exit Montenegro and then right around the corner, maybe 100 yards away, now we had to enter Bosnia in order to get to the rafting drop site. Like, oh no, here we go again. We pull up to the line, and you're guessing what comes next. The border police wouldn't let us through. No matter what we said, we explained the story, the translation, photocopies. Bosnia, kind of the history, totally different area of the world, different culture, different history, different past, very different natural personalities. Weren't having it, weren't hearing it, didn't care. And so we get to the customs and we have to turn around. In that moment, we're like, we just spent 4 hours in a car driving to this destination to have this epic experience with the team. Everybody else got in. We had to turn around. Everybody else that was in our van that had their passports, we said, go, 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 go. And a couple of us that didn't, myself, Nick, a couple others, said, okay, well, we'll have to head back. And so they went, and so we got in the van, turned around, and started heading back. And then we're like, oh no, here we go again. We got to go back through the Montenegro border that we just got through. We're like, we have to have the same conversation that we just had. So we go back through, different person at the border than we spoke to, have the same conversation, thoughts going through our head. What do we do? We get stuck in between borders. Then all of a sudden we realize we're driving a car that's not ours, registered to an Italian, with Americans with no passports. We drive through the border. They ask for the car documentation. We give it to them. They look at it. They start to talk aggressively in a different language. They ask us to pull over and then get out of the car. We're like, oh no, we're sitting here driving a car that's not ours. We don't have the paperwork. We can't communicate to the Italian that just left. We don't even have passports. So obviously all the disastrous thoughts of what could be start racing through our mind as we're detained at the border. 5 minutes go by, and then eventually they come back and give us back our IDs and say we can go. We're like, whew. And at this point, now we're less concerned that we drove 4 hours and have to drive 4 hours home without an experience in between, and maybe a little bit grateful that at least not being detained or something worse. There's nothing that can shift your perspective on a problem instantly than running into the potential of a bigger problem. You want to minimize, right, the problems you have in your life, go create a bigger problem. A bigger problem will always create perspective on the problems we are faced. So now we're just grateful that we are on the right side of the country we need to be in with a long drive home. And so we begin to drive a long drive home, frustrated, right, let down, but, you know, at least grateful that we're going the right direction. At this point, the car's almost out of gas. We're like, man, we didn't fill this thing up. The person driving didn't fill this thing up. Right before we dropped them off, they said, hey, you're gonna have to go get gas in order to make it back. So we're getting low, very, very low on fuel. And fortunately, as we're driving in the middle of like nowhere, we come up on a gas station and we pull over and fill the car up. And I won't mention any names at this point, but I'll say I was in the passenger seat. And so we pull up, we fill the car, we fill it up with the premium, I think it was 95 gas, all the way up, and we're off and ready to rock, full gas tank, ready to go, and so off we go. Driving back maybe 20 minutes in, the car starts acting a little funny, like starts to sputter a little bit. Almost like you're out of gas, right? You know the feeling when you're driving and the car starts to get low on gas and sometimes the engine kind of stalls out in between. Not horrible, still going, but it wasn't doing that before. Nick, who's driving, says, it wasn't doing that before. What is that? What's going on? And we continue to drive, and the matter gets a little worse and a little worse to the point where the engine is really sputtering. We're like, this doesn't make any sense. It feels like the car is out of gas, but we just filled it up. And mind you, we're in the middle of nowhere, driving through mountains in Montenegro in a country, literally nothing, right, for hours in either direction. And then all of a sudden, the thought hits us. What kind of fuel does this van take? Pits of the stomach. Oh no. We pull over. We get out of the car. We stare at the gas tank for 30 seconds before I reach down and flip it open and see the giant sign on the inside of the gas tank that says diesel. Yes, we filled the entire gas tank up with premium gasoline in a diesel van. We start YouTubing what happens when you put gasoline in a diesel and start reading the commentary of how it can be disastrous, how if you continue to drive and if not caught, the engine can explode, right? It goes on to say, hey, this is a fairly common occurrence. 1 in 7 people driving diesel cars will experience this. And I quote, usually from a friend that borrows the car and doesn't know it's a diesel tank. There we are, sitting there going, oh my gosh. Had we kept driving, the engine would have totally exploded. And here we are with a car stuck on the side of a road in the middle of nowhere in a country that doesn't speak English. So we grab our stuff with no other choice than to start to walk. Get out of the car, begin to walk, come up on a little sign that has a little picture of a bed and a picture of a hot plate and says 3 kilometers that way. And we start walking down a road that I promise looked like the opening of like every famous horror movie. Like, we're walking down a road and all you see is these sporadic farms, giant hay bales, pitchforks, random big dogs, barbed wire fences, but vast land. Like, there's nobody here. And as we're walking, yes, I can't make this up, a beautiful day all day long. Starts to drizzle, starts to rain as we're walking in the middle of nowhere. We continue to go looking for some sort of commercial restaurant, hotel, anything where we could kind of post up. About 4 kilometers in, a few miles in, we come up on this, I guess you would call maybe a hotel? Etnocilia, middle of nowhere. Little cabins that rafters from around the world sometimes use. And we pull in. And to fast forward the story, after all of that, we use that place to make phone calls, connect with people, find ourselves a tow truck, find ourselves a ride home, get the car towed, and get us all the way back the 3 hours or so remaining to Budva, the city we started, where the car could spend some time getting drained, repaired, and fixed so people could get back home, and we could continue on the next day with our final meetings and events. 12 hours from the moment I left the hotel to the moment I walked back in. About 12 hours and 26 minutes to be specific. Most of which driving and dealing with problem after problem after problem, scenario after scenario, obstacle after obstacle. How's that for a day in Montenegro? What's interesting is at one point in the conversation, my partner Nick, he's like, I don't know if this is a sign or a test. And I thought that was a powerful statement. I don't know if this is a sign or a test. How often in life do we come across situations, and maybe we've never defined it by that language, but that's the feeling that we have. Like, is this a sign trying to tell me something? I'm supposed to do this or not supposed to do this. This is meant to be, not meant to be. Or is this a test? Is this one of those things put in my way to see if I can overcome, see if I can transcend, see if I can get through? And you guys all agree that a lot of things in life are both of those things. Sometimes we get signs in different ways. Sometimes we get them over and over again until we see them. Many times we get tests. I believe in that mindset. Sometimes the greater the challenge, the greater the reward. We are presented things to overcome, to make us stronger, to get us better, to get us to learn, to grow, to get to another side. And that question is a good one to ask in different parts in our life. Like, is this a sign and is this a test? And maybe the way we interpret is going to dictate how we react or respond and the ultimate outcome of the situation. But I've come to develop a belief even above both of those questions. And that's the belief that despite whether it's a sign or despite whether it's a test, whatever happens is, in that situation, exactly what is meant to happen. You guys, that's a belief that I have. In that day, although it was disaster after disaster, it was actually a really fun day. We didn't have negative energy. Yeah, it was frustration in moments, but we ended up seeing beautiful country, meeting some local people, experiencing kindness of people and strangers willing to help, total helpless, right? Dumb Americans. And having a story and an experience that I'll remember for the rest of my life as one of those days, and seeing things we wouldn't have normally seen, and having, right, a story we wouldn't normally have. Having a lot of time to connect, to plan, to strategize. Or ended up being an experience that I'll put in my books as a memorable adventure. But I think a lot of that is because of how we chose to respond to it. And for me, a belief that regardless of the situation, Sometimes it's what we want, sometimes it's what we plan. Often it's not, right? And it may not be what we plan, it may not even be what we want. But regardless on whatever side of the coin, what you're going through or what you're presented with is, having a belief, a fundamental belief, that whatever you're going through is exactly in that moment what is meant to happen, allows you to receive what you're in the middle of an entirely different way. Approach it from a different perspective, extract lessons that you wouldn't normally get, have a different energy or attitude that maybe you would normally have, something that can be more constructive or productive to solve what you're in, to get you through another side, and to extract a learning or a lesson that you maybe wouldn't get otherwise. And you guys, that's a reflection on the day. And for me, no matter what obstacles we come across, no matter how many disasters of a day, no matter how many times we put in situations where everything that can go wrong will go wrong, or the plan you have gets totally sidetracked, focus on what we can control. We can do the best we can do in a situation, right? We can do all we can do in a situation. And if we do those two things, we do all we can do, we do it the best we can do, then we have to have faith then whatever comes after that is exactly what's meant to happen for you. And that's all we can control. But we can control doing all you can do with the right intention. I'm not saying sit back and just let things happen, but give it your all. The best you can do. Don't just sit there and let things push you down, but give it your 100%, the best effort you have. But once you do those two things, you've done all you can do, the best you can do. What happens after that is what's going to happen regardless of what you can control. And an elevated belief is whatever comes after that. Whatever. Good, bad, expected, unexpected, perfection, disaster. We got to have a faith. Whatever it is, it's exactly in that moment what's meant to happen. And for that day, for whatever reason, that's what was meant to happen. Yes, the team had a blast. The rafting looked epic. I'm sure connections and bonds were made. Yes, I'm sure there's lessons learned. And yes, I'm sure there was some reason, right, that Nick and I weren't supposed to be there in that moment that day. And some lessons that'll come from it. Because that's the way it's meant to be. And yes, Italia, Italy, won the European Cup that night. So everybody was ultra excited. And the next day we continued with our events and post-event meetings and debriefs, shared the story, and concluded what was an awesome weekend that I know is going to take the community to a whole new level. But I wanted to come with you today with just a story, maybe put a smile on your face of a little adventure, maybe some lessons in there to always check when you refill your fuel, if it's a gasoline or diesel, especially when you're international. Maybe a little fun and smile, but maybe also a relatable lesson that some days things go exactly the way you want and other days they don't. But that doesn't mean it can't be an adventure and experience. Doesn't mean you can't have the right attitude and perspective. Doesn't mean it can't turn into something you look back and say, hey, that's a memorable moment in the story worth telling. And it definitely doesn't mean that we can't choose to have a belief that no matter what the situation we're going through, as long as we're doing all we can do, the best we can do, we can let go and have faith that whatever comes after that is meant to. And that relieves guys a lot of the angst and a lot of the pressure, trying to control the uncontrollable. So there's my disaster day from Montenegro. Want to share with all of you guys today. Hey, did anything resonate? Have you ever had one of those days? Have you come to similar conclusions? Give me some feedback below. Let me know below. Would love to hear your story. And maybe this conversation will inspire you to approach the next series of events, series of obstacles that we will inevitably run across in our life with a little different vantage point, a little different perspective to help us have a little more fun and get us on the other side in a little better way. Until the next time, guys, look forward to where we walk together. If you're not subscribed, go click subscribe. Rates and reviews appreciated. And until the next time we walk together, here's to always remembering in any event, do all we can do, the best we can do, and let go. Have faith that whatever's happening, expected or unexpected, planned or unplanned, want or unwanted, it's exactly what's meant for you in that moment. Take care, everybody.
Hey guys, one last thing. I'm super excited that this new podcast, Alive by Design, just went live. You see, I designed the show to bring you inspired thoughts and fascinating conversations with the world's most impactful people, to provide transformative principles and practices to help you wake up, move toward your meant to, and feel fully alive. And I'd love for you to help me spread the word now. Simply subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on this platform right now. So if I've ever given you value, please do me this personal favor and go subscribe now. And if you found today's episode helpful in any way, make sure you share this with at least one friend today. You have the power right now to change someone's day. So send them a text message with a link to alivebydesign.com, or simply copy and paste the link right from this podcast platform. Who's one person you know right now that you want to see succeed, that you want to see grow, that you want to see feel more alive? Shoot them a text with your largest takeaway from today and be a light in their day. And if you were referred here by a friend, make sure you shoot them a text back and say thank you. I'd love to hear from you directly on what you got from today's podcast. So if you're up for it, drop by my Instagram @BlakeMallon and shoot me a DM. And as always, thank you for showing up. I'm grateful for you, and I hope our time together today in some small way helped you feel a little more alive. Until next time.